A new part of the primary school curriculum teaching children about relationships, including LGBT rights, was back in the spotlight this week. Now, some schools in Birmingham have suspended the lessons after a campaign by Muslim parents. There have also been protests in Manchester. The government says they will continue, and one local MP made this intervention.
We aren't going to get back in the closet or hide or be ashamed of the way we are. And nor are we going to allow a generation of pupils that are now in school to go through what the pupils in the 80s had to go through because this chamber let them down. Yes. And nor are we going to allow this to happen in the name of religion.
Also joining us this morning is Nazim Ashraf from the Oldham Interfaith Forum. He's working on maintaining dialogue between schools and families on the content of sex education in schools. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. What
is the problem? If we all accept that some children are gay, some children are trans, why should that not be part of sex education in schools?
I don't think there's a problem with that, with that narrative in totality. I think the problem is the guidelines are not being followed. Obviously, this legislation has the guidelines stipulated, attached to it. So you've got the statutory guidelines which stipulate that the parents are the primary teachers, the religious appropriateness, the age appropriateness must be consulted with the parents. That's not happening in some cases. Most of the schools that we've spoken to, that is happening in the Oldham area. We've created steering groups, we've created committees.
This is a discussion about process. What it boils down to is that our democratically elected representatives have said this will be part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
That's the way it is, in the same way certain literature will be part of English lessons or maths.
Yeah. Well, English or maths doesn't have a 52-page document attached to it as statutory guidelines, does it? So the government understands that this is a sensitive subject. What we're saying is that the RSE guidelines are not being followed through. Now, what's happening in schools in Birmingham where the dialogue is actually broken down, the schools are not opening up the door of dialogue, or in other areas. In Oldham, we're trying to prevent that. There is no problem with having two opinions, is there, in this country? We're a democratic country, we have two opinions.
No, there's no problem with having two opinions, but if our elected representatives have decided this should be part of the curriculum, then it's part of the curriculum.
It is part of the curriculum. We agree with that. Yeah. There's no issue with that being part of the curriculum. That's being taught in PSHE for quite a number of years. Sex education has been taught in schools for many number of years. There's never been an outcry. The outcry is that the parents are not being consulted, and I think that's the crux of the problem. And that's being used somehow to sort of portray.
Is the outcry not about the new relationships that have been brought in as part of it?
Not in Oldham. No, definitely not.
Not in Oldham. OK, this then is about process, isn't it? What should be done to make sure that all communities are listened to when it comes to sex education?
Well, communities have been listened to. I'm old enough to remember Section 28. I heard Angela Eagle's speech, incredibly powerful and moving. But this is about the reality of relationships in 2019. It's about equality. And of course, fundamentally, it's not only about what is right, it's about the law as well. It's about the law. You don't choose which law you break and which law you don't.
And that's the point, isn't it? It's
that's exactly my point, yeah. And the law also stipulates that the guidelines are there, right? So the question should be asked that why are schools, or how are we going to address the schools that are not following the law? i.e. they're not following the statutory guidelines. So why are they not? This is the question that we need to ask our leadership, or our schools even.
David, should more be done then to open the debate?
No, the law is the law. I can understand why some parents feel, sensitive to this particular issue. I was in education at the time when this came through the Commons. It was always going to be very controversial. But we are living in a time where, you can't choose what you are what you are. And, that should be made aware to youngsters that this is, this has been going on for time memoriam. This isn't a new phenomenon. This is something that's gone on from the dawn of time. And it's about time that we embraced it and said, look, this is who we are as a society. And teach it and make children aware of it so that we don't have any prejudice in the future.
Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with that narrative. I don't have any problem. If there is a school where the parents The parents and the teachers, the school and the parents have come together. They've decided that these are the resources that are going to be used. This is how we're going to teach this topic. Then that's for that school and the parents to decide on how
But
what
it's
is
not,
appropriate.
is it? This is for the government to decide, and the government has decided that this will be part of the curriculum. So regardless of whether it's brought in for discussion, this is a fact. They've said for too long children have been made to feel different, be it because of their race, because of their religion, because of their identity, because of their sexuality, and it has to stop. And making this a part of the curriculum is integral to that.
It is part of the curriculum. This is what I'm saying, that we agree it needs to be taught. What we're saying is how it's going to be delivered, the government hasn't stipulated. Instead, they've given us the guidelines to follow, which means taking the age appropriateness into account, taking the religious appropriateness into account, the cultural sensitivities of the cohort that belong to that
But you're
school.
adding caveats there, which could then remove it from the curriculum.
Well, the guidelines stipulate it. I didn't write the guidelines, the government did.
So what would you like to see happen now?
Well, I would like the schools and the parents working together. Whatever is good for that cohort might be different to so you could have a school which is predominantly Jewish or predominantly Christian. They may decide that that material is not okay, but this material is. That would be fine for that school.
And if you were liaising between parents and a head teacher and these parents just refuse to accept, as we know is happening in Birmingham and in some parts of Greater Manchester, that some children are gay, for example, would you say to them, listen, you're going to have to accept that that is the case?
There has to be a give and take on both sides. And I think working together, opening dialogue, having the compassion and working with the school is the only way forward.
OK, many thanks for joining us this morning.